If you enjoyed this HFY story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more amazing sci-fi content. Share your favorite moment in the comments below. Professor Kelthak stood before the assembled xenobiology class with what could only be described as barely contained terror. His three eyes blinked in rapid succession, a telltale sign of stress among the vryn species, as he adjusted the holographic projector with his trembling appendages. "Students," he began, his voice crackling through the universal translator. "Today we examine the most nightmarish creatures in the known galaxy, the death world they call Earth." The lecture hall fell silent. Even Prina, who normally couldn't stop chattering during class, shut all four of her mouths simultaneously. Earth had a reputation. A bad one. Kelthak tapped a control pad, and the first image materialized in shimmering blue light above the demonstration platform. It was horrifying. 8 legs, multiple eyes, fangs dripping with venom. The collective gasp from the students made the air filtration system work overtime. "This," Kelthak announced with theatrical dread, "is what Earthlings call a spider. Notice the chelicerae, the venom glands, the ability to produce silk strong enough to trap prey. On any civilized world, such a creature would be classified as a biological weapon. Humans share their dwellings with these abominations." A student in the back row fainted. Medical drones rushed to assist. Kelthak continued, warming to his subject. "But wait, there is worse." He switched images. "Behold the scorpion. Armored exoskeleton. Pincers designed to crush and hold. And that tail, oh that terrible tail, carrying enough neurotoxin to paralyze species 3 times its size." Prina raised a tentacle, her voice quavering. "Professor, surely the humans have eradicated these monsters." Kelthak's laugh was bitter. "Eradicated? My dear student, they coexist with them. Peacefully." The door to the lecture hall hissed open at precisely that moment. Every eye, stalk, and optical sensor in the room swiveled toward the interruption. A human walked in, wearing the casual jumpsuit of an exchange student. Marcus Kim, if Kelthak remembered correctly, from the human delegation currently touring the station. "Sorry I'm late, Professor," Marcus said, completely oblivious to the atmosphere of existential dread he'd just walked into. Transit tube was acting up again. "What did I miss?" Kelthak's primary eye twitched. "Mr. Kim, we were discussing the lethal fauna of your homeworld." "Oh, cool." Marcus glanced at the hologram still hovering in the air. The scorpion, frozen in mid-strike, looked particularly menacing under the blue light. "Hey, is that a death stalker?" The room went deathly quiet. Prina made a sound like a deflating balloon. "You recognize this creature?" Kelthak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sure," Marcus said cheerfully, dropping his bag and taking a seat in the front row. Most students had instinctively moved away from him, creating a buffer zone of empty chairs. "We've got tons of these in the desert regions. This one's actually pretty small compared to some species." There was worse. There was worse. Kelthak felt his circulatory fluid run cold. "Mr. Kim," he said slowly, carefully, "you are telling this class that Earth has larger versions of these toxin-bearing horrors." Marcus shrugged. "Well, yeah. The forest scorpion can get up to 9 inches long. But they're mostly harmless unless you really bother them." "Why? What's the big deal?" What was the big deal? What was the big deal? Kelthak's species had once encountered a creature 1/10 the size of a forest scorpion on a colony world. They'd evacuated the entire planet and marked it as uninhabitable. And this human was asking what the big deal was. "Perhaps," Kelthak said, fighting to keep his voice steady, "we should continue with the presentation. Mr. Kim, please hold your questions until the end." He switched to the next image. A centipede, its countless legs frozen mid-crawl, its mandibles spread wide. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, squinting at the hologram. "Oh man, is that a scolopendra? Nice. Nice." He'd said nice. About a creature that looked like it had been designed by a committee of nightmare specialists. "The arthropod you see here," Kelthak explained, trying to ignore the human's enthusiasm, "possesses modified legs that inject paralyzing venom. Each segment of its body is independently controlled, allowing for both incredible speed and flexibility. It's been known to hunt prey many times its own size." "Yeah, they're pretty quick," Marcus agreed. "My cousin had one as a pet back in Arizona." Someone in the back row screamed, "As a pet." As a pet. Kelthak secondary, I began twitching in sync with his primary eye. This was not going at all how he'd planned. His carefully constructed lecture about the terrifying dangers of Earth's ecosystem was being systematically dismantled by this cheerful human who apparently thought venomous nightmares made acceptable household companions that he pressed on, determined. Next, we have the wasp. Note the stinger, which, unlike the bee, can be used repeatedly. The venom causes intense pain and, in some cases, anaphylactic shock. Marcus tilted his head, examining the wasp hologram with the kind of casual interest one might give to a mildly entertaining advertisement. Oh yeah, wasps. Those guys are jerks, not gonna lie. They build nests under your porch and get all aggressive when you're just trying to have a barbecue. Kelthak felt a small surge of vindication. Finally, acknowledgement of the danger. Yes, precisely. Aggressive. Dangerous. Capable of multiple stings. Your species must take extreme precautions when encountering them. You just knock down the nest with a broom handle and run, Marcus said, waving his hand dismissively. Or call pest control if it's really bad. My dad usually just does it himself though. Your dad. With a broom. Against venomous flying attackers that could sting repeatedly. Prina raised another tentacle, this one shaking so badly it looked like it might fall off. Mr. Kim, are you saying your parental unit engages these creatures in direct combat using primitive wooden implements? I mean, when you put it that way it sounds way more dramatic than it actually is, Marcus replied, grinning. But yeah, basically. Kelthak decided to move swiftly through the remaining slides before his cardiovascular system gave out entirely. He cycled through images of bullet ants, whose sting was described as comparable to being shot. Marcus nodded along. Fire ants, which attacked in coordinated swarms. Marcus mentioned something about mounds in his backyard. Tarantulas, massive hairy spiders the size of dinner plates. Marcus's comment about them being fuzzy and kind of cute caused 3 more students to require medical attention. And finally, Kelthak said, his voice hoarse from stress, we come to perhaps the most disturbing category. Insects that humans have documented, but which defy conventional understanding of survival biology. The mosquito, carrier of diseases. The tick, which embeds itself in flesh. The bed bug, which feeds on blood while you sleep. Marcus wrinkled his nose. Okay, yeah, those ones actually do suck. Mosquitoes especially. I got absolutely destroyed by them at summer camp last year. Destroyed, Kelthak repeated. Yet you survived. Well yeah, I just itched a lot. Used some antihistamine cream. It was annoying. Annoying. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. On Kelthak's homeworld, a single insect bite was treated as a medical emergency requiring immediate hospitalization, genetic screening, and a 3-week quarantine period. This human had been repeatedly bitten and considered it annoying. Kelthak was about to conclude his lecture, salvage what remained of his dignity, and perhaps retire early from teaching altogether when Marcus raised his hand. Professor, can I ask a question now? Every survival instinct Kelthak possessed screamed at him to say no. He said yes anyway, because apparently his sense of academic duty was stronger than his sense of self-preservation. Go ahead, Mr. Kim. Marcus stood up, walked over to the holographic projector, and pointed at the earlier image of the scorpion. So, I'm just curious. Why are you showing us all these bugs in a xenobiology class? Are they extinct on other planets or something? I figured most worlds would have similar stuff. Kelthak's laugh was slightly unhinged. Mr. Kim, most civilized worlds have nothing even remotely similar to these creatures. Arthropods of this size and lethality are virtually unknown outside of death worlds. Your planet is unique in hosting not 1, not 2, but thousands of species that would be classified as extreme biosecurity threats anywhere else in the galaxy. Huh, Marcus said thoughtfully. Weird. They're really not that bad once you get used to them. Get used to them. Get used to them. Mr. Kim, Kelthak said very carefully, what exactly does your species do when confronted with these creatures? Marcus shrugged again. That casual, unconcerned shrug that was rapidly becoming the most terrifying gesture Kelthak had ever witnessed. Depends on the bug, I guess. Most of the time, we just leave them alone. Sometimes we catch and release them outside. The ones that are actually dangerous, like black widows or brown recluses, we kill if they're in our living spaces. But mostly we just coexist. And the ones that are edible? Prina asked suddenly, her voice barely audible. Marcus blinked. Sorry, what? She said edible. Kelthak translated, even though his translator was working fine. He just couldn't quite believe what Prina had asked. Oh, right. Marcus's face lit up like he'd just remembered something wonderful. Yeah, actually, lots of cultures on Earth eat insects. Crickets, grasshoppers, mealworms, beetles. They're pretty nutritious, high in protein. I had cricket flour protein bars once. Not bad, kind of nutty. The lecture hall erupted into chaos. Students were fleeing toward the exits. Someone triggered the emergency alarm. Medical drones were swarming everywhere. In the corner, a Glection student had curled into a defensive ball and was rocking back and forth, muttering prayers in their native language. Kelthak stood frozen at his podium, staring at Marcus, who looked genuinely confused by the reaction. Did I say something wrong? The human asked. Wrong. No, not wrong. Absolutely accurate, which was somehow so much worse. Mr. Kim, Kelthak managed to say, are you telling me that humans voluntarily consume these creatures? I mean, yeah, billions of people do. It's normal in a lot of places. Asia, Africa, Latin America, even parts of Europe and North America are getting into it. Sustainable protein source, good for the environment. Kelthak needed to sit down. Unfortunately, his species didn't really sit in the traditional sense, but he leaned heavily against his podium, which was close enough. Around him, the lecture hall resembled the aftermath of a small-scale evacuation drill gone wrong. Half the students had already fled. The other half were too paralyzed with shock to move. Marcus, bless his oblivious human heart, still looked confused. Seriously, did I miss something? Are bugs like sacred here or something? Sacred? Kelthak wheezed. No, Mr. Kim. Not sacred. Terrifying. Lethal. Nightmare fuel given chitin and legs. But they're just bugs. Just bugs. The casualness with which he said it was somehow more disturbing than anything else that had happened in the last 20 minutes. Prina, who had apparently decided that if she was going to die today, she might as well die learning something, managed to form a coherent sentence. Mr. Kim, you mentioned eating these creatures. Could you elaborate? Marcus perked up, apparently thrilled someone was finally showing interest instead of horror. Sure. So, like I said, lots of cultures have been eating insects for thousands of years. Chapulines, that's roasted grasshoppers, are super popular in Mexico. You can get them with lime and chili. Thailand has tons of street vendors selling fried crickets, bamboo worms, silkworm pupae. They're crunchy, salty, actually pretty good. He reached into his bag. Kelthak's remaining functional eye widened to maximum aperture. I actually brought some snacks from the human quarters, if anyone wants to try. No. This was not happening. This could not be happening. Marcus pulled out a small transparent container. Inside were what appeared to be roasted crickets, seasoned with something that smelled simultaneously appealing and absolutely wrong. He popped the lid open. Anyone want one? They're barbecue flavored. The remaining students scattered like they'd been hit with a dispersal grenade. Prina stayed, though Kelthak noticed all four of her mouths were clamped shut so tightly they looked vacuum-sealed. Only one other student remained, a Carathian named Blex who was apparently either braver or more foolish than his classmates. Marcus held out the container. Professor, you've been teaching about Earth biology. Don't you want to experience it firsthand? Experience it. By eating it. By putting a dead Earth arthropod into his digestive orifice and consuming it, Kelthak heard himself say. Perhaps just one, for academic purposes. What was he doing? What was he doing? But scientific curiosity was a powerful force, and Kelthak had not become a xenobiology professor by being timid. Also, Marcus was looking at him with such hopeful enthusiasm that saying no felt somehow cruel that he reached into the container with a manipulator appendage, extracted a single roasted cricket, and held it up to the light. It was brown, crispy looking, covered in reddish seasoning. Its legs were still intact. Its antennae were visible. This was definitely one of the creatures from his lecture, just processed and flavored. Kelthak put it in his mouth. The crunch was audible throughout the lecture hall. The flavor hit immediately. Smoky, savory, with a slight sweetness and tang from the barbecue seasoning. The texture was light, crispy, almost like a vegetable chip, but with more substance. It was actually quite pleasant. Kelthak chewed slowly, analyzing every sensation. His 3 stomachs didn't immediately reject it. His toxin filters weren't triggering alarm responses. His taste receptors were sending signals of general approval that he swallowed. Well, Marcus asked eagerly. It's not horrible, Kelthak admitted, his voice filled with confusion and a touch of betrayal. At his own taste buds, mostly, Marcus grinned and turned to the other 2 remaining students. See? Totally safe. Want to try? Blex, the Carathian, slowly extended a claw. He took a cricket, examined it with his compound eyes, then mimicked Kelthak's action. Crunch. Chew. Swallow. His facial plates shifted in what Kelthak recognized as surprise. This is acceptable, Blex announced. Concerning, but acceptable. Prina was trembling, but one of her mouths cracked open slightly. The flavor profile? Nutty, slightly earthy, with the added seasoning providing umami and mild heat, Kelthak described, falling back into his professor voice because it was either that or acknowledge the existential crisis he was having. Prina made a decision. She took a cricket. 3 of her mouths remained firmly closed, but the 4th opened wide enough to accept the insect. She bit down. All 4 eyes widened simultaneously. By the 7 moons of Praxia, she whispered. It's actually good. Marcus was beaming now, clearly delighted to be sharing his planet's cuisine. He popped a cricket into his own mouth, crunching cheerfully. Right? I told you guys. We've been eating these forever. They're sustainable, nutritious, and tasty. Win-win-win. Kelthak stared at the container of roasted insects. At Marcus, happily snacking on creatures that most of the galaxy would classify as biological hazards. At his 2 remaining students, who were cautiously taking second helpings. Mr. Kim, he said slowly, what else do humans eat that we should know about? Marcus's expression turned thoughtful. Well, there's scorpions. You can fry those. Some people eat tarantulas too, usually fried or roasted. Oh, and witchetty grubs, those are beetle larvae. Pretty big, lots of protein. Scorpions. The scorpions. You eat the venomous ones. Kelthak's voice had climbed approximately 3 octaves. You remove the stinger first, obviously, Marcus said, like this was a completely reasonable clarification. Same with the venom glands. Then they're fine. Taste kind of like shrimp, actually. Shrimp, Kelthak knew, were Earth aquatic arthropods, which meant humans had looked at terrifying land arthropods and thought, these remind me of that other arthropod I eat, let me eat these too. The implications were slowly sinking in, and Kelthak felt his worldview cracking like an eggshell under pressure. For cycles, he'd taught xenobiology with the comfortable assumption that Earth was a death world to be feared and avoided. A place where nightmare creatures roamed freely and humans survived through sheer stubborn resilience. But now, watching Marcus casually munch on what the rest of the galaxy considered bioweapons with legs, Kelthak realized he'd had it backwards the entire time. Earth wasn't the death world. Humans were. Mr. Kim, Kelthak said, his voice taking on the careful tone of someone who'd just realized they'd been poking a sleeping predator. Let me ask you something. When your species first encountered these creatures, these spiders and scorpions and centipedes, what was your initial response? Marcus chewed thoughtfully, swallowed, then answered, well, depends on who you ask. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans either avoided them, killed them when threatened, or ate them when food was scarce. Pretty standard survival stuff. Standard. Survival. Stuff. Blex, who had been quietly working through his 3rd cricket, spoke up. On my world, when we encountered our first venomous creature, a small serpent no longer than my claw, our entire settlement relocated to a different continent. We still tell stories about the Great Fleeing. It's our most important historical event. Marcus blinked. Over one snake. It was a very concerning snake, Blex said defensively. Prina added, my people once found an arthropod in one of our agricultural domes. 6 legs, no venom, roughly the size of a seed. We sterilized the entire dome, destroyed 3 months of crops, and held a planetary day of mourning. For a bug the size of a seed, Marcus repeated slowly. It was I in our food, Prina said, all 4 mouths speaking simultaneously in distress at the memory. Marcus looked at Kelthak. Is this normal? Mr. Kim, Kelthak said, gesturing at the now nearly empty container of crickets. You have just fed 3 different alien species creatures that their respective civilizations would classify as existential threats. Yes, this is normal. For everyone except humans. The weight of that statement seemed to finally penetrate Marcus's cheerful exterior. His expression shifted from confused to contemplative to something approaching realization. "Oh," he said quietly. "Oh wow. You guys are actually scared of bugs." "Terrified," Kelthak confirmed. "Absolutely. Bone deep, civilization-defining terror. But they're so small. So is a virus, Mr. Kim. Size is not the issue. Lethality, unpredictability, the existence of venom and toxins, these are the issues." Marcus sat down heavily in his chair, the container of crickets forgotten in his hand. "I need a minute to process this. You're telling me that humanity is weird because we're not afraid of insects. You're weird because you eat them," Prina corrected. "As snacks. Flavored. For enjoyment. And you share your living spaces with them voluntarily," Blex added. "Keep them as pets. Allow them to exist in your gardens and homes. And apparently use wooden sticks to engage them in combat," Kelthak finished. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Kelthak had learned indicated stress or confusion in humans. "I always thought Earth was supposed to be the scary one. You know, heavy gravity, aggressive wildlife, extreme weather. We're the tough guys from the death world." "Oh, you are," Kelthak assured him. "Make no mistake, Mr. Kim. Earth is a death world. But not because of the creatures that live there. Because of what those creatures turned you into. Which is," Kelthak gestured at the cricket container, "apex predators who look at venomous creatures designed by evolution to be as threatening as possible and think, I wonder what those taste like with seasoning." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus stared at the container. Kelthak, Prina, and Blex stared at Marcus. Somewhere in the distance, the station's air filtration system hummed softly. Finally, Marcus spoke. "So when humanity joins the Galactic Council next month, and we're doing the whole cultural exchange program thing, maybe we should leave out the part about eating bugs." "That," Kelthak said emphatically, "would be tremendously appreciated. And the spiders as pets thing. Please. And the scorpion hunting. Mr. Kim, I'm going to give you some advice, professor to student. When your species attends diplomatic functions, perhaps focus on your art, your music, your literature. Talk about your achievements in science and exploration. Share your philosophies and your dreams for the future. But don't mention the bugs," Marcus finished. "Don't mention the bugs," all three aliens said in unison. Marcus nodded slowly, then looked down at the cricket container one more time. A small smile played at his lips. "You know what's funny though? Back home, eating insects is actually considered kind of adventurous. Weird, even. Most people stick to conventional meat and vegetables." Kelthak felt something inside him break. "You're telling me this isn't even normal by human standards? I mean, it's getting more popular, but no, most people haven't tried it. So eating the nightmare creatures is your species' idea of being adventurous?" "Yeah, pretty much." Kelthak turned to his remaining students. "Class dismissed. Forever. I'm retiring. Effective immediately." Prina and Blex gathered their belongings and hurried toward the exit, though Kelthak noticed Blex pocketed 2 more crickets on his way out. Academic curiosity, probably. Or maybe the barbecue seasoning really was that good. Marcus stood up, looking genuinely apologetic. "Professor, I'm sorry if I disrupted your lecture. I didn't mean to cause problems." Kelthak waved a manipulator appendage dismissively. "Mr. Kim, you didn't disrupt my lecture. You destroyed my entire understanding of comparative xenobiology. But perhaps that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we need our assumptions challenged. So we're good. We're good. Just promise me something." "Sure, what?" "When the diplomatic dinners start next month, and someone from the Galactic Council asks what humans eat, maybe start with pizza." Marcus laughed, a sound that Kelthak was learning to associate with humans being amused rather than threatening. "Deal. Pizza it is." As Marcus left the lecture hall, Kelthak looked at the holographic projector, still displaying images of Earth's arthropods. Creatures that had terrorized his nightmares for years. Creatures that humans sprinkled with seasoning and ate while watching entertainment programs. He powered down the projector and made a note in his personal log. Date, current star date. Entry, humanity continues to be the most terrifying species in the galaxy, but perhaps not for the reasons we initially thought. And then, because scientific integrity demanded it, he added one final line. Addendum, Roasted crickets with barbecue seasoning are surprisingly palatable. Texture 7 out of 10. Flavor 8 out of 10. Would tentatively consume again for research purposes that he sealed the log, locked his lecture hall, and headed toward the station's commissary. All that stress had made him hungry, and suddenly the usual VRYN nutrient paste seemed boring. Maybe, just maybe, they had more of those crickets. For research purposes, of course, strictly research.